Good morning, and welcome to Ingredion's 2025 Investor Day here in New York, and greetings to everyone joining us online around the world. My name's Noah Weiss, Vice President of Investor Relations, and it's great to see so many familiar faces this morning, as well as some newcomers. Before we begin, I kindly ask that you switch off your mobile devices as we are webcasting the session today. The presentations that we will be giving this morning are available under the Investor section of Ingredion.com. Please note that we'll be making certain statements we'll make today that will contain forward-looking information that are governed by our safe harbor provisions. Since our last Investor Day, the company has undergone a significant transformation. Today, you will hear from our executive team on what's next. Jim Zallie, our President and CEO, will share our vision for Ingredion's future and our strategic priorities. Mike O'Riordan, our Senior Vice President of Texture and Healthful Solutions, will update our strategy since the segment and our Texture Day last November, and share some of the accomplishments in building a global texture house. Rob Ritchie, our Executive Vice President of Food and Industrial Ingredients, LATAM, and Food and Industrial Ingredients, US-Canada, will highlight how these segments are leveraging their unique strengths to meet changing consumer needs. And Mike Leonard, our Chief Innovation Officer, will explain how we are accelerating our R&D strategies to drive innovation from soil to shelf. And Jim Gray, our Executive Vice President and CFO, will explain how we will bring it all together with a comprehensive financial overview and an update on our long-term outlook. Before we go into the presentations, you have an agenda there in front of you. Please note that there will be two distinct Q&A sessions today. The first will cover the four presentations, and please keep your questions only to those. At the end of the morning, we'll have a full Q&A where I'll invite all the executives up on stage, after which, in the adjacent room, we'll have an informal lunch where we can continue the conversation with the executive team. With that, let's get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jim Zallie.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be with all of you. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us here in New York City. And we've got a very informative and engaging program for the next few hours. And we're going to update our long-term financial targets, and we're going to outline the steps that we're taking to deliver on those commitments. So let me get started and start discussing our strategic vision to drive growth. As Noah mentioned, Ingredion has been on a business transformation journey the last number of years. And that's been built on strategy development, first and foremost. Being clear on where we want to go and where we believe we can win. Second, portfolio optimization, and we'll talk more about that as well. Starting last year, business resegmentation, a big focus on innovation. You're going to hear from Mike Leonard, our Chief Innovation Officer, and certainly driving cost competitiveness. And Eric Sipe, the head of global operations, is with us here today as well. And so through all of those efforts, we are diversifying our presence and offerings through geographic expansion, capabilities building across functions. It's been very, very significant and part of the transformation and part of the success that's permeating through all aspects of our business, especially in relationship to something that you probably don't have visibility into, which is digital capabilities, some infrastructure investments for efficiency that we think are going to position us in the future to more readily adopt the impacts that AI will have on our business. And certainly, and you'll hear more about this, operationalizing solutions selling. And I think it's very important that you take away today what we have done to organize for success as it relates to moving from being an ingredients company to a company that truly is selling solutions and what that can and will do for us going forward. We're committed going forward to building on our track record for value creation with what you've come to expect from Ingredion: disciplined capital allocation, strong risk management, and those centers of excellence that I've talked about to drive efficiency and productivity. So the long-term growth targets that we're sharing today, we believe are achievable and will allow us to build on our strong financial position as we continue to work to maximize shareholder returns. So I know many, many of you are very familiar with our company. In fact, I was talking to one lady, and she's been a very long-term shareholder and was telling me that I'm the third CEO for Ingredion that she has known personally. But for those of you that are not familiar with Ingredion, we are a global ingredient solutions provider, primarily to food and beverage customers, which represent more than 70% of our net sales, but also increasingly selling higher value, more functional ingredients for industrial, pharma, and beauty and home companies. And again, something that you probably haven't realized and something that we don't talk a lot about. But over the last, I would say, 6-7 years, we've really focused on those two, say, smaller industrial parts of our business in relationship to beauty and home and pharma. We've significantly improved our margin structures. We've dedicated separate manufacturing operations to them from a standpoint of being able to make them reliably and be able to meet regulatory requirements. And those have contributed to the overall success, small but growing. And we've been in business, most importantly, as a company for more than 100 years. And we're well positioned and diversified. And that's key as well, with more than 16,000 global and local customers, which we service through 30 Idea Labs in 22 countries. So a very diversified company when it comes to customers, product mix, geographies, and we think that also positions us well for future success. So since we were last together, and I know a number of you were with us in Bridgewater, New Jersey in November of 2024, we've made significant progress both strategically and financially. We, of course, completed a resegmentation of our business last year that we believe strengthens both the parts and the whole of the business. We've made purposeful changes in our portfolio, divesting our Korea sweetener and industrial starch business and announcing our intent to sell our majority stake in our Pakistan business. Last year, we reached record levels of EBITDA, earnings per share, and cash, and increased our gross profit margins to a new higher level. We've exceeded the growth targets we established at our Investor Day in 2022 for net sales, operating income, as well as gross profit margins and cash from operations. We've also exceeded our cost competitiveness targets, and we've reinvested some of the savings and the cash in key manufacturing facilities and in R&D and in go-to-market capabilities to increase capabilities building. And that's, again, to drive more from the innovation engine, but also to operationalize solutions selling. And we'll talk more about that here in a moment. And these results allowed us to deliver strong shareholder returns compared to a peer set in our industry over the last 1, 3, and 5 years. And we believe we're well positioned going forward to build upon our recent success. And what we're focused on now, and it started with the strategy development, is to build competitive advantage in a pursuit of our winning aspiration. And our winning aspiration is to be the go-to provider for texture and healthful solutions that make healthy taste better. So you're going to hear from Mike Leonard on what we're doing to accelerate on-trend innovation, and we're segmenting our markets and our customers within the regions and the countries in which we operate to pursue pockets of growth. You know, I think in the food industry right now, it is challenging from a standpoint of overall volume growth, and you certainly know that, and we all are working towards where are there pockets of growth, and that's what we are actively pursuing, leveraging deep customer relationships in the local markets in which we operate. We're investing to maintain leading market positions in target categories, very clear about the categories we want to play to win, and improve profitability and margins. And we're using our strong balance sheet to first and foremost invest in the business, expand capacity, to strategically grow, as well as make carefully timed investments in reliability and infrastructure to secure earnings and cash generation. So we want to do that as well, to continue to have the cash generative businesses that we have that are very high ROIC businesses as well. Continue to help fuel the investments to drive growth, primarily in texture and healthful solutions, when you see the projections on the long-term targets by segment. So the segment structure we introduced last year combines better coordinated global reach, for example, in the case of Global Texture and Healthful Solutions, with strong local expertise, leveraging again our long-standing presence and deep relationships in region and in country with customers. You're going to hear Rob Ritchie talk about this from a standpoint of how long we've had a respected presence in the LATAM countries and what kind of a competitive moat that presents for that particular region and that business. And then I'll make some brief comments right now profiling the compelling business characteristics of each of the segments. Texture and Healthful Solutions, for example, you ask yourself, why did you go through the resegmentation? Moving away from a regional structure with high-level commentary previously around what was called core and specialties to move to this segment structure. Texture and Healthful Solutions. We have global, multinational, regional customers across multiple channels. And one of the things right now that we're working on is identifying, as part of our strategy development, what are our shared measures of success globally across the business. One of them is something called Markets That Matter. We've been very clear on that. Relevant channels for growth across branded, private label, food service. So we're dissecting, segmenting all of these opportunities and doing that where there is global relevance from a standpoint of the customer base, or where there's an opportunity to benchmark and drive best practice for companies that are regional and or local. In that business, it's become over time a business with limited business seasonality, And the average selling price, and you'll hear Mike O'Riordan talk about this, is 2x what it is in the other segments. So we're driving growth there and making more investment. Again, Rob's going to talk about food and industrial ingredients LATAM, but we have a competitive advantage and we believe a strategic moat as it relates to the market positions that we have in those countries. And Rob will talk about it, and I believe it'll be very compelling. And again, in those countries, the long-term prospects are bright because of the trend towards affordability. These are ingredients that we provide that are mainstay ingredients in many of the food products that are sold in those regions, driven by just population growth overall and the trend towards urbanization. And then one of the success stories, certainly over the last few years, and you'll see the numbers, is in the food and industrial ingredients U.S.-Can business. And that's a business that for many years we used to get some very intense questions about, but that business has performed outstandingly. We believe, certainly over the last year, 18 months, it's also because of the focus from a segment standpoint and how we've driven operational excellence and improved the gross profit margins and operating income margins significantly. And one of the other things is we are the only producer in Canada, and that's a very important business for us that probably gets not enough notoriety. And then we have a segment called Other, but that was designated at the time because it had Pakistan and Korea. I've talked about the plans there, or what we've already done. But in addition, that segment has two other operating units that are higher growth units. One is leveraging sugar reduction or stevia business, where we're the leader in stevia-based ingredients, and also for protein fortification in the case of pea protein isolate, which this year is growing high double digits. So the segment structure really is creating better alignment with market opportunities, customer needs, and our business objectives. And within each of these segments, Ingredion's market position is significant. We're a significant player in large and growing markets, each with attractive growth potential. You'll hear from Mike O'Riordan and Rob Ritchie shortly on how we intend to grow at or above the market in each segment. So this is the simple, long-term strategic framework that defines our three key priorities over the next period. Each of the presenters that will follow will speak to the specifics on how we're going to execute against each priority for each of the segments. Overall, for Ingredion, when it comes to profitable growth, we're focused on what is happening and co-creating with customers. We're leveraging customer relationships and capitalizing on the amount of reformulation that's currently happening in the industry, especially driven by the quest for health and wellness, new product innovation. You'll hear from Mike and Rob on how we're defining those markets that matter and looking to expand internationally where we have a right to win. And we're extending our solutions selling globally. And when it comes to innovation, we're investing in differentiating R&D and capabilities building, especially as it relates to texture science. And I'll speak more on this in the next couple slides. And when it comes to operational excellence, we've been on a mission to make service and quality differentiators and drive positive operating leverage from what Eric Sipe, who again is in the back of the room, calls the 4 C's. Care, Ingredion, and I hope you all know this, especially those of you that have followed us for many years, we pride ourselves on one of our foundational values, which is care first. And we operate at world-class levels of safety. And Eric is driving the same sort of culture that we have for safety and care for employees and process safety as it relates to food safety and quality. Second is customers. we have our operations very connected at the hip with the go-to-market teams as it relates to multi-level selling of all that we bring to customers as one integrated organization, especially leveraging the investments we're making in functional excellence to bring that before the customer. Capacity. What Eric has brought to the organization is looking where we can make sure we have headroom for growth capacity to capitalize on opportunities when they arise from a standpoint of accurate supply-demand forecasting, driving the brilliant basics, but also looking at capital efficiency, how we can either avoid or delay capital. And lastly, it's about cost. And you'll hear Jim Gray talk about it. And again, Eric lives this, which is net structural savings and how we can operate to offset inflation. So you'll hear more about these three priorities in each and every one of the presentations. Now, there are 5 macro trends that I think you'll all identify with that we believe will offer and shape opportunities in the future. Mike Leonard will discuss and share examples of progress we're making against a few of these. But let me make some brief comments about each very quickly. So as it relates to clean label, there's of course the desire for transparency, for folks to know what's in their food. Don't know if you realize, but Ingredion has the market-leading position in functional native starches. These are starches that are not chemically modified, they're physically modified. They're labeled simply as cornstarch, potato starch, tapioca starch. But they have all the performance characteristics of highly specialized products. And they enable clean label formulating. And that's an opportunity that we think we can broaden and leverage when it comes to solution selling to deliver clean label enabled solutions. Affordability, especially today more than ever, where consumers are pinched with the price points of food and trying to make their discretionary spend go farther. Ingredion works with its understanding of functionality on how to replace expensive ingredients. Substitutes for eggs and cocoa, for example. Sugar reduction, leveraging that toolbox of stevia for high-intensity natural sweetening, the protein fortification, along with the sugar reduction, pick up on the trend for the GLP-1 drugs and what you read about and hear about from a standpoint of how their diets may be changing when it comes to consuming products that have more fiber fortification, meal replacements, and certainly protein fortification. And you'll hear more from Mike on that as well. So when it comes to the key priorities of innovation, our focus is on clean label texturizers. And this is something that we are leveraging, again, that unique portfolio that we have. And we've made decades of investments in proprietary manufacturing on how to make these products. So it's a customized process that we have. And again, building out these clean label formulating capabilities. Investment in expanding texture science leadership. And Mike will talk more about some of that, and we have some examples of the equipment that we're using and that we've made investments in. And we're really the first to market with a texture solution service model. And this is consumer insights driven. So we've had Larry Fernandez in the back who's responsible for commercial excellence. And we have a really very respected group in the industry that works with customers to really understand where the consumer is going. And we share perspectives and ideas and then back that up with the science-based approach towards how we can deliver a texture that meets a white space, an opportunity for white space innovation for a customer. And we have examples and case studies we're going to share with you. We've piloted this in 2025 with broader rollout in 2026. And again, I want to give you just a feel for how this is permeated through the organization. So I just literally yesterday got an email from Nancy Wolf, who's in the back of the room, and she's our CHRO. And Nancy has a gentleman who works for her that's been on point the last year who knows our organization extremely well from a standpoint of all the go-to-market capabilities. And he has led the sea change that's taken place over the last 18 months in relationship to how we go to market with customers to really develop solutions selling capabilities. And so it was an email exchange, and I got a chance to read it yesterday, and it was celebrating a success at a customer, delivering on a mochi texture, which is a chewy, elastic texture, in China. And it was a new win that we delivered in 2 months. And what was notable in the email exchange was that the gentleman that works for Nancy said he was on the customer visit. This is an HR person, on the customer visit with the go-to-market team, because he's working to make sure organizationally we put the right skills and talents on how to operationalize that. And at the end, Nancy says, yes, and I'm excited because I'm going to be in the UK and I'm going to be visiting a customer with our sales manager for an opportunity that they see that they're about to close on for solution selling. So that's where we're excited about what the future holds. And then lastly, Rob's going to talk about, and Mike's going to talk about, Leonard, about the investments we're making where we see an opportunity, especially in sustainable food packaging, with regulation changes, the needs for more biodegradable, sustainable solutions for coating. Rob's going to talk about grease resistance and PFAS replacement. We see an opportunity to invest there in industrial applications that are high value, high function. I do want to talk a little bit more about operational excellence because it's really played a key role, I think, in our success over the last 4 years. And again, our focus is on making service a differentiator and driving cost competitiveness. And you know, we only stood up the global operating model a little more than 4 years ago. Now that may sound like a long time, it's really not. And the point of highlighting that is that I think, and Jim Gray would say, we're in the early innings of the delivery of the benefits from going to this global operating model, as opposed to the regional structure that we had with duplicative manufacturing, different standards. We weren't doing benchmarking. So we did that to develop operational standards and systems, require benchmarking, and drive excellence across the global supply chain and operations, stand up a global procurement organization. We're going to have the first ever global procurement supplier summit in the history of the company on October 1st, inviting in key suppliers to have that. We weren't capable to do that 4, 5, 6 years ago. In addition, what Eric has done is the ability to leverage machine learning and other AI tools to improve forecasting, scheduling, and reliability. It's also noteworthy to highlight that one of the most significant achievements in operations in recent years is the investments we've made to strengthen and regionalize and de-risk our supply chains. Coming out of the supply chain crisis, COVID, 2021, we were exposed. We ship a lot of product around the world. We've made strategic investments in countries to be more locally and regionally self-sufficient. It's something else you may not have fully appreciated about Ingredion. All of this has enabled us to raise the bar on ourselves. So for example, we used to just measure our service based on time in full, delivered on time in full. Now we measure against a perfect order standard, taking every single possible customer dissatisfier and measuring it and making sure that we can deliver against a perfect order standard. That's led to improvements and increases in our Net Promoter Scores. Eric's also strengthened our centralized engineering team, and that's optimizing our asset footprint. If you've paid close attention, we've announced the closure of a few facilities. We're executing against those, and those have financial returns heading into next year. As well as obviously making sure we have that capacity at a cost to enable growth, and again, minimizing, delaying, or avoiding capital spend. And this has delivered, honestly, and Jim will say it as well, millions of dollars of savings with an ability to optimize, again, over this next period that we're going to talk about. So, the long-term targets we are establishing for the next 3 years are for 2 to 4% net sales growth. Now that compares to 3% for the 2022 to 2024 period, 5 to 7% adjusted operating income growth. That compares to 14% that we delivered from 2022 to 2024, and slightly higher adjusted EPS growth of 7 to 9% And that compares to 17% EPS growth from 2022 to 2024. And our recent track record has demonstrated that we have an experienced, execution-focused leadership team that operates with a strong drive for results. We want to win. And in addition to today's presenters that you're going to hear from and you're going to meet, you're going to also have a chance over lunch to meet the rest of our executive leadership team that are here today, and they're all sitting in the back of the room. And I'd like to quickly, if it's okay, introduce each one of them, ask them to stand in case you'd like to connect with any of them later today during lunch. So first, I'll start with Larry Fernandez. Larry, if you could stand up, our Chief Commercial and Sustainability Officer. Tanya Yeager DeForest, our Chief Legal Officer. Mark Carnes, our Vice President of Corporate Development and M&A. Eric Sipe, our Senior VP of Global Operations and Chief Supply Chain Officer. And lastly, Nancy Wolf, our Chief Human Resources Officer.